Welcome to episode 7 of the Tapping Into podcast. The feedback on last week's podcast with Prune Harris was so good, so do make sure you catch up on that too. This podcast is sponsored by Alverum, an award-winning cult beauty and well-being brand steeped in ritual, powered by nature, focused on self-care and finessed by science. After all the sun we've been having, my skin is soaking up the firming body lotion. In a gorgeous bottle and handy pump, it is perfect for this time of the year. Alverum are offering you a chance to feel relaxed, restored and renewed by giving you an exclusive 20% discount using the code TAPPINGFORMUMS. In this week's episode, I catch up with Mary Kennedy. Mary describes herself as an audacious, inquiring Celtic crone. She is a women's development coach and mentor, Celtic wisdom guide, embodiment teacher, and determined to be a new paradigm entrepreneur. Her passion is evolution, in particular women claiming the sovereignty of our own body, mind and soul. Her work is about reweaving the forbidden feminine back into our lives and our culture, igniting a new understanding of the masculine and healing the split between the inner feminine and masculine in all genders. In her global online Celtic Wheel program, she guides a tribe of women on a year-long soul journey through the 8 sacred Celtic festivals. Here we discuss the dark feminine and the suppression of women, the Cailleach awakening, the invitation to embodiment, the balance of our masculine and feminine sides, the meaning of surrender, the power of the void, and how love is both the darkness and the light. And we chat about the Celtic Wheel, and gosh, I cried at so many different points during this recording and when I was re-listening too. This is a very powerful conversation, and I feel this will really speak to your soul. You can find Mary at Mary Kennedy, MaryKennedy.com, or at Mary Kennedy Wisdom on Instagram. As always, do let us know how you get on with this chat and tell us what speaks to your soul. Mary, welcome to the Tapping Into podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm so delighted to be here, Sarah.
And where are you based in Ireland?
I'm currently in Dublin. I've been here for many years, but that probably is likely to change in the next couple of months.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
A little move to the countryside?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure yet, but like many of us, we're being reassigned at this time. So that's on the cards for me anyway.
Exciting. And where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Sligo, northwest of Ireland. From a little village called Aclair at the foot of the Ox Mountains.
Wow.
Beautiful,
sounds idyllic.
Country. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And you have been on quite a journey, from what I can gather, a journey of reclamation, a journey inward, a journey home, a journey around the globe in terms of, learning with so many different people. What sparked your journey home to you?
I suppose it depends on the lens with which you look through to answer that question. I mean, in regular, and it was looking through a regular lens, it was crisis. Looking through a mythological lens, it was the Cailleach, which is, she's the hag in the Celtic tradition who comes and shakes you and tells you can't live like this anymore. Or, through an evolutionary lens, it's like evolution is what brought me home or started me on the journey. So any of those things, they're all the same in my view now.
Yeah.
But it was when things fell apart, when the life that I'd been living just wasn't sustainable anymore. And I was a slow learner, Sarah. I was getting nudges right through my 30s. I wasn't listening. I was just plowing ahead, pushing, forcing, doing all that, high achieving. I was, I'd been very successful in my career, and, it looked like I often say I was living the dream, or should I say the illusion, but then it got shattered because it's not sustainable. I now see from here, this perspective almost 20 years later, at 39, my world fell apart, and really what fell apart was what I was identifying so strongly with, what I was doing, who I was hanging out with, you know, living that dream that the culture said was the dream, was this is success. But
Mm.
actually, and I was obviously so attached to it, I couldn't hear the nudges until the whole thing had to come crashing down.
Until the rock bottom. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't quite rock bottom at that stage, but
Oh, okay.
I got to rock bottom a little late. I thought it was rock bottom, but as the Kalia comes, that great hag, she comes and she keeps well, inviting you initially into the descent, and then suddenly she's going, okay, now you're really coming in. So yeah, that came about 5 years later.
Wow. Does the kayak link to like the Lilith or the Kali energy? Is that
Yeah, it's the
there?
dark feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dark feminine that has been so denied and repressed in our culture, anything that's dark and death and destruction, falling apart, messy, chaotic, um, aging, all of that. It's anything that our culture, really doesn't or hasn't. I mean, it's slightly changing now because of all our work, but the culture to that, the patriarchal culture in particular, just absolutely never valued. And so it was pushed down and pushed away into our unconscious, and we're living lives unconsciously, trying to avoid this Kalyuk, this Kali, this Lilith.
Yeah.
She has so many names, Baba Yaga, that like in all the fairy tales, all the myths, it's like you go into the dark forest, it's darkness, death, it's destruction, it's like shedding, it's
Shattering.
yeah, yeah.
And why are we so afraid of it? Like, why have we been repressed and suppressed?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there's lots of different, there's ways that, well, why have we been can bring me into my kind of into more my like, I want to analyze it, which is important, but I think it's much more important to know actually, well, yes, we have, why have we, and I will answer it, but not to stay too long there, because actually it's much more interesting to know, well, how have I repressed this, and how has it shown up in my life? But to go back to your question, why have we, it's way back. I mean, it's for some people, some theories are that, back in the Neolithic, there was the matriarchal culture, and then even the Celts, as they came with the patriarchal, and that time, not just in Ireland, but right through Europe, with a more, the matriarchal cultures were pushed down, the feminine, with the goddess, the cultures that really honored the goddess were pushed down. Why did it happen? I don't know. But it's all about power, I really like Dimitri George's writes about that. Actually, it's just maybe a natural cycle, that just like the moon, there's a dark phase, and we've been in a dark phase since then. That allows my body to soften, because there's no real blame, because like it's the culture and we each create the culture. So I don't find it terribly generative to blame people, to stay in blame. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
it's important, but so what I like to think of is we're coming out of the dark phase. The feminine is rising, and that was a phase that we had to go through. There was matriarchal led cultures, prehistoric cultures, then we moved into this around the Neolithic time, where the feminine was repressed. And now it's a time of integration of both. That's my sense. So I hope
Yeah.
I answered the question.
Yeah, no, totally. How does it feel when you were having your Kailak awakening? How would you recognize that in your body? How did you know what it was?
Well, I mean, I didn't really know initially. It just was that, that crisis of, oh my God, everything's falling apart. Like it was just so incredible because there were so many domains of my life falling apart. So I had been, training as a yoga teacher from when I was 35, and this was 39. So I'd become a yoga teacher. So I was always, I was really interested in the mystery of life. I
Mm.
kind of lost it. As a child, was really interested in it. I was very deeply spiritual child. I loved being in processions and singing hymns and lighting candles, um, and then I kind of strayed from that. But there was always a depth of kind of something connected to something bigger in me. So I suppose how I recognized it was when I started to see that there was so much falling apart. But I think the biggest time when I went to an astrology reading, which was kind of bizarre because I wasn't doing it out of a spiritual thing. Someone had just said to me, I was changing my career, I was trying to have kids, and someone said to me, "Go and get your astrology chart read. You might get a sense of what you're good at or what your kind of talents are, your gifts are." And I went, and it just Pluto. I was going through a Pluto, some kind of Pluto thing. All I remember is like walking out of there going, "Oh my God, it's not all my fault. There's something bigger at play here."
Mm.
So that helped me. And then it was just the sense of, you know, really feeling lost. I mean, that to me is the mark of the Kalyak. It's massive disruption and loss. And so there was no ground beneath me. The ground kept breaking up beneath me. And that was the feeling I suppose I had.
Mm.
And when you're in the middle of a crisis, you have some kind of grace, I think, comes that allows you to mostly not until afterwards that you look back and go, how did I do that? How did I go through all of
Mm.
that? But I did have a sense of like something bigger is at work. And yeah, it's just deep loss, disruption, and then the grief that comes with that and the confusion. Those are things that I really would have felt. And even though I was a trained yoga teacher at that time, I wasn't in my body. So I didn't feel anything in my body.
Mhm.
This was all in my head. Um, and a lot of shame actually too, because it was like, how could I let my marriage fall apart? And how could I suddenly have gone from a big career to nothing and moving out of the beautiful house into, not knowing where I was going to live. So yeah, all of those things, but not necessarily felt in the body because at that time my whole journey was to climb back into my body and start to really feel these.
To reconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it like the masculine world around you was completely crumbling to kind of level you to go in to find the feminine?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know it at that
Yeah.
stage
Yeah.
was, and it's not just the masculine around me, it was the masculine in me was,
Yes.
that part of me that as as growing up in the 70s and 80s in Ireland, I learned that, you know, being a good girl, high achieving, um, nailing things, knowing things, um, managing and controlling things were actually how you succeeded. And suddenly, when the Kaliuk comes, there's none of that. There's no controlling.
Mhm.
There is no managing, because everything is completely upturned and you're dragged by the hair through the
Screaming.
screaming through the realms of hell. No, I mean, I know that sounds, but that's kind of what's happening in the psyche, so yeah, that was it. The structures that I had identified myself with, and because the culture valued them, therefore I valued them, I got rewarded for them. So those structures were dissolving. I just mean, as I would see it, my soul was just not allowing them to be sustained any further.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it was the invitation was, can I come back to my depths? Because what I would say there is that unhealthy masculine aligns very much with the surface level, with what others think, what the arena, what people are in the looking at you. We really, I was, not we, but I see it in a lot of the women that I coach and work with.
Mm-hmm.
We're so identified with being accepted and seen as like really great and um kind of perfect, was certainly one of the things I was really facing. So anything like that started to dissolve, and the invitation was, can you let them go? Can you surrender into this not knowing, which will bring you into your depths, actually? I
Mm.
mean, I know that now from this side. I didn't know that back then. It was
Yeah.
just like, oh my good Jesus, what's happening? Who am I?
It is a very, very big lesson in surrender. So what does that mean to you? What does surrender mean? What does letting go mean?
Well, I think I know, because I do it. I'm constantly being brought into that place and invited. Surrender is such a magnificent practice, but it's really hard in the beginning when you've lived a life where you've been rewarded and you've been acknowledged for knowing everything, getting things right, being the one up, being the top of the, like, I know this, I can nail this, I've got this, I've got the answer to this. Like, the surrender is, can I let go into not knowing? That's the surrender. Can I let go into something bigger that actually, like I call it the cosmic flow? Can I surrender into that so that, like, I can trust in something? Because with surrender, it comes with trust and it comes with resistance. And we're always trusting in something. So when we're not surrendering, we're usually trusting in a hostile world, in a world that, Einstein said the most important question humans ask themselves is, do I believe that the world is hostile or friendly? So when we're not able to surrender, usually we have a belief that the world is hostile. And so we have huge resistance to
Mm.
surrender, because it's like, if I let go, what will happen? If I let go of Mary, who, had this big career and, uh, had this lifestyle, then who am I if I'm Mary, who's teaching a yoga class with 2 people in it? So what's really important is, we often say, oh, just let go, just surrender, but it's really hard. You can't.
Mm.
So we have to marry. Well, I feel it's important that surrender and resistance go hand in hand. So you surrender, you kind of exhale a little, and then you resist. And then there'll be something else will happen. You'll get a little bit more trust in the universe that is this beautiful web of holding, of cosmic movement that's moving through you. And you slowly, but it takes a lot of, it takes a lot to just actually surrender. So what often happens, and what happened to me, is we usually turn invitation of surrender into, oh, if I, a self-improvement thing. It's like, I'm going to surrender, I'm going to surrender. And then it's like your neurology is not able to surrender. we're not set up for surrender.
Mm.
So I really think it's important that, I remember somebody saying at a retreat I ran once that, it's not easy to let go, but you can just loosen your grip. So it's incremental. And this is where the feminine is, to me, this is the way the feminine works. The feminine is like weaving gently, incrementally, slowly, like stitching these things into our lives. Rather than if we approach surrender in the old patriarchal masculine way, it's like, come on, just surrender, let go, come on, you can do it. And it's like, no, I can't. Every neuron in my body is really
Scared.
and holding on. So can I first be with that resistance, and allow myself to just be kind and know that this is part of what we were conditioned into? And then when we find that softness and we regulate the neurons a little, we get a little bit more trust, and we can land in that moment. And then it's like, oh, I can just surrender at this age a little bit. And then slowly. So for me, that's one of the biggest pieces is, we can say, oh, the feminine is so important. But if we approach the feminine through that masculine way, over masculine way of like, we got to nail it. We got it. It's the goal. We have to do it. I'm not a good spiritual woman if I'm not able to surrender. That's really important, I think.
Yeah.
Important.
Yeah. My favorite tool for letting go is tapping. And I think that works really nicely to what you've just said, because the goal of tapping is to allow the body to feel safe.
Yeah.
And it hacks the brain, in fact, to switch off the fight, flight, freeze response, telling the body and the nervous system that we are safe. And when we feel safe, we're allowing ourselves to be in the present moment, are we? And we're able to let go, to let the resistance go. So I think,
I love tapping. I really do. I just think it's such a gentle, feminine, reassuring. Something happens very, very powerfully in the body when we tap. Yeah, I mean, it brings a consciousness. That's my experience. And then, as you say, it has that amazing effect of creating a feeling of safety, which is what this is all about,
Yeah. Something I heard over the weekend, which has been playing around with me, is that we struggle to let go because of there's a link to love so that there's an attachment to love. And if we let go of something or a job or something, there's a fear that there'll be a lack of love as a result.
Well, okay. Yeah.
And I've been trying to mentally apply it to certain things, and it kind of does play out for me. It's like, what we want most is to belong, isn't it? And to fit in and to feel loved. Totally. And to know it. So then if there's an act, the act of letting go comes with a fear of not belonging or a fear of not feeling loved, then subconsciously we are going to resist doing that.
Of course. Yeah. And it's another way of saying, like, when you let go, when the Collier comes and she shakes you and she says, okay, Mary, you can't live like this anymore. You cannot. And you begin to let go. What happens is you move into a void. And in the void, it appears there's no love. In the void is like, it's black darkness. It's like, who am I? What's going to happen to me here? Because we've been so conditioned to deny the death and emptiness and the void. And actually, if we're willing to stay there and willing to move through the resistance, to be with the resistance, and then let it bring us into the void of love is what we're most afraid of, because we're afraid that we'll die. It's very unsafe to not belong in a tribe.
Yeah.
So we're in this void, in the darkness, and there appears to be no light and there appears to be no love. But actually, when you're there, that's the dark feminine. She will guide you through. She is so much love. And in that moment, like at the winter solstice in the Celtic tradition, that's the moment the summer solstice is born, when you are in the dark night of the soul, when you think you're alone and there's no love, and you're in an existential place of what is the point? What's this all about? That's the very moment that the light returns. And then we realize that they're just in a dance with each other. And that love is both the darkness and the light. That it's not an absence of love, but we've been taught in our culture that love is light.
Yeah.
And darkness is not love. Darkness is bad and evil. And this has to go. This has to go.
I have full, as you were just saying all of that, I'm closing my eyes listening to you. It's like my whole body is tingling. And for me, that's my truth signal, that's just so powerful. It's like, just because we can't see something doesn't mean it's not there, Yeah. And actually, we're being held in that space. We're being nurtured and cradled. And look at the womb, we are in that. Is exactly it, the womb. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
The womb. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the revelations there that I really, when going through that's what you receive. And then as you go through these initiations into that womb and the fullness that's there in the emptiness and the void and the love that's like totally holding you, then that's how we find trust. That's how we begin to trust. The cycles. So things have to go, have to fall apart, have to be a little chaotic or a bit more chaotic. And then I know the spring will return. I know growth will come. Just like in the womb, I know this darkness will move. I will move out into the world in birth and rebirth. Yeah.
Wow. That's just so powerful. And leads us really beautifully into what you work with in terms of the cycles and the Celtic Wheel. And, I am quite removed from this way of connecting still. And, I am many years awakening and evolving and still not fully connected back to nature yet. So for people that are listening who don't know what the Celtic Wheel is, can you give me a high level overview?
Yeah. First say though, like the feminine moves really slowly. So I'm 20 years at this, from the time, almost 20 years from when I had that crisis and I was kind of woken up. And it took me 10, 12 years to really honestly, authentically connect back to nature. It's like we're all on different journeys. And, your work with the body is nature. Like you're so connected to that. So, again, it's that ideal thing. We think, we have to be out walking the fields and, tuning with all that. And it's like, that's just
hugging trees.
Exactly. That's more like oppression of ourselves. Like just you're on the journey, whatever. But as a high level, the Celtic Wheel is really a calendar of ritual celebration that, our Celtic and pre-Celtic ancestors left to us. And it outlines the 8 Celtic festivals. So everybody knows the solstices and equinoxes, which were more the pre-Celtic stargazers, more in that Neolithic time. And then in between each of the solstices and equinoxes, at halfway mark, there's what's called the cross-quarter days. And they were more Celtic. They came in more in the Celtic time, where, you know, the land and the tribe are in really working with each other. You know, they reflect that. So they would be Samhain, which is in November, between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. Then between the winter solstice and spring equinox, we've got Imbolc. And then between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, we've got Bealtaine, which is where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then between summer solstice and the autumn equinox, we have Lunasa, which is the harvest. So Samhain starts the winter, and starts the Celtic year. It's because the Celtic year starts in the darkness. And then Imbolc around the beginning of February starts spring. Bealtaine, just around now at May, starts summer. And Lunasa, around the beginning of August, starts the autumn.
Harvest. Yeah. Amazing. I've seen that. Well, I think there is a rise in the awareness of this cycle of life and rituals. Have you obviously seen that across? And I'm thinking across the UK and Ireland,
across the globe. It's
yeah.
unbelievable. I mean, it's the rise of the feminine coming back into cyclical living. You know, that's what it is. Coming back to tuning to nature, because this is all comes from nature. You know, these cycles, the ancestors lived so close to nature that they naturally lived these cycles, and we have separated ourselves from that. So there's a huge reclamation of that, which is incredible to see, and particularly with women.
Yeah.
Right across the globe. Like, I'm amazed in the Celtic Wheel. Like, I had people from China, Peru, as well as, you know, the States, and people going, I have never been to Ireland, but I just feel a real connection to it, because I do it very much, you know, connected into the Irish tradition. And we're so lucky, because the scribes and the monks wrote down a lot of the mythology in Ireland, because the Romans never got here. So we have a very rich written record, albeit they they absorbed it into the Christian retellings, but it still gives us a great sense of our good, you know, the gold is still there from the oral tradition that was lost in so many other places.
And are we evolving the old traditional take on things, you know, in terms of bringing in the awareness of trauma and the body, the neuroscience, the epigenetics? Are we adapting it for a new world?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's how I approach it anyway. The Celtic Wheel is approached in lots of different ways by different people. My way of, and how it came to me and how it made sense to me, is really through the lens of evolution. So I'm interested in the lost wisdom, the wisdom that was lost, and going back and picking it up, because I've been very influenced in my life by a great man called Ken Wilber, a philosopher, and he talks about, his work is really talks a lot about evolution, and about what we did was, or what would be kind of the most generative, is to transcend a period of time and include it. So say we go back into the Celtic times or the pre-Celtic, instead of, we just transcended it, we didn't include it. Like when we came into the Enlightenment phase, when science became really important, and, you know, anything that could be seen was important, can be seen as important, anything that's invisible. I mean, this is very simplistic, but we did not include the mystery. We did not include that ancient connection to nature. And so that's how I approach the wheel. I believe we're like 21st century women, and we're here to be, I'm not interested in going back and becoming a Celt, but I'm interested in including that deep Celtic wisdom and mythology and deep knowing and soul connection to that, our ancestral knowledge, and then weaving it back in with the new wisdom we're getting from science, from the neuroscience, from psychology. You know, they're incredible when you bring them together. And then, you know, at this edge of the Aquarian age, a new age, I really believe we're at that, right at that precipice, that we're actually then weaving a new world into being by braiding in these different wisdoms. And at the center of it, to me, is like, we are, at our essence, our essential nature is really powerful and very wise. And it's just, that to me is what this work is about. So to answer your question, yes, our evolution is a very important part of this, but it doesn't mean that's just the way I do it. And then my invitation is to anyone who comes to study with me is, you know, find your own sovereignty in this. That's a very important part of the Celtic tradition, was, you know, this is beautiful, beautiful material that has been left behind, and it's, we have so much great access to it now in this day of, in this time of technology. You just find what resonates with you and trust that, you know.
Yeah, totally agree. That's kind of where I position what I share as well. You know, it's, if it resonates in your body and gives you the tingles or reminds you of something you already know, then great. And if it doesn't, you know, that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's okay. It might in the future, it might not. How did you come across the Celtic Wheel and like on the journey back up with the Kylock by your side? How did you, like, so what I'd love to know is, what are like the benefits of working through and with the seasons in this way, for example, but maybe using your story to share, and how it becomes real?
oh yeah, nice. I like that, because you know, it's one thing to talk about things, but then it's really nice to ground it in you know, first person experience. So I hit that crisis, and I had nothing, like I had no maps to show me. I was like, I was walking around. I luckily had yoga, and I went to live in a yoga center in the States while I was in the middle, like when I was coming out of my marriage breakup, and just all I was trying to do was orient myself and find meaning. What's all this about? And thankfully, yoga did have some kind of maps that could help me come back into my body, at least. And then, so I wandered in the in the lost forest for quite a while. I did have a sense something bigger is happening here, and I could see how I had also, you know, was training as a coach. So that was a very deep self-reflective personal development piece. So little by little, but then 5 years after that initial crisis, having gone through 5 years of a lot of loss and uncertainty, my dad, or 4 years, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And I was so close to him all my life. And he was a great man, beautiful man, and a beautiful soul, a beautiful, open-hearted man. And he was diagnosed, and I had been kind of a good girl all my life, particularly with my dad, you know. And I remember the day that I heard his diagnosis, every part of me wanted to go down and take his suffering away and just be the good girl. And I just went, I'm going to spend whatever time I've left with my dad, not hiding anything. I didn't hide for 1 minute my heartbreak. I didn't try and clean up my messy grief. I just showed him everything. And we had an amazing 9 months, which was really where he really saw me in my truth.
Wow.
And it was incredible. Like it was, I was suddenly seeing, oh my God, this is how to live, not this perfection who's trying to clean up the mess and make things okay for everybody and fix everyone and sort everyone out. And then as he was dying in the hospice, in the great hospice in Sligo, we as a family were there for 5 days, and he had gone into, he was conscious, he was unconscious, and I couldn't find him on the kind of day 3 or 4. I was like, where is he? I can't get a connection to him. And I went out to the Hazelwood in Sligo, which is a beautiful enchanted wood. I didn't kind of associate it at the time, but I went out. He was a farmer and he walked the land, and he would pray when he walked the land in his latter years in particular. And I went out and I was in the bluebells and the gorgeous hazel in between the hazel trees. And I just got a connection to the land. Something happened. And I got his presence and something beautiful happened. I don't know what it was. I have no words for it. And he passed away the following day. And then about a month later, I kept asking him to help me, to just give me direction. And I met the great Dolores Whelan, who became my teacher in the Celtic tradition. And it was just, I just knew it was him. Something had happened in my connection to the land of Ireland. So I grew up on a farm. I should have been connected, but I was so not connected to the land. But something happened in that forest, and it was incredible and deeply. It's just a knowing I have that that's how I got connected in. And what happened then was it started to show me, and I saw it as a map of how to work with grief and loss and letting go, and how to move into the feminine, because the first half of the Celtic Wheel is the feminine half of the year. The feminine is dominant. 6 months, all through winter, all through spring, is an invitation to just not force and push, but to lead with the feminine, to stop reaching and grasping and sorting out and fixing, which is what I was doing in my life. Even 5 years after the crisis, I was still trying to be, the best teacher in yoga in Dublin, or I still had all those things. I still have them at times, those human things of like,
yeah.
And so just like it showed me how not to be the perfect daughter that's going to take the suffering away from everyone or sort everyone out. And it showed me how to have a deeply intimate time with my dad's passing, with somebody who I'd spent, 45 years on the planet with. And I had that last 9 months that was just like, oh my God, it was just so full of devastation and bliss and joy. Had the full range. And that's what the wheel started to teach me. It's like, it's okay. You can feel. It's okay to feel all of it. It's okay to be in your body. It's deeply uncomfortable, but this is living. Wow, this is like being alive. This is like being alive, like a tree or or a mountain or a lake. Like there's lots of stuff going on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
What a journey, and a journey of authenticity, something that you perhaps weren't in that space, to then committing to be authentic with your dad, maybe then allowed you to progress further and go deeper with that.
Yeah, and be real and true and myself. And I think it's that piece of like, I saw afterwards, it's just this fear of showing that you're a mess, or that you're falling apart, or you don't have it nailed, or you don't have the answers. And to show somebody that, as a woman who grew up in the 70s and 80s, who was like, you know, we've got it, like, we know how to do this, we know how to, like, really be in contention and be so capable and so, you know, and to just actually be in that hopeless, falling on the ground, crying, falling into my father's arms, sobbing, telling him how much I was going to miss him. Oh my God, I can even feel
No.
it still. Yeah. But it was
Wow.
like, to show someone that, to even in our relationships, without people who are dying, but to show someone that actually I don't know what to do here. I'm a mess. I'm falling apart. Actually, is such a beautiful thing to be in relationship with someone like that. But we're taught that that's not safe.
We're afraid.
It's not
Yeah.
always safe. You know, we have to, you know, that vulnerability is much more complex than just that. But that's what the wheel and the feminine shows us, that, you know, this thing of being run down, helpless, hopeless is actually okay. It's an okay state, because it just shows that in that state I might reach out to someone and be real and true and ask for help. And I never did that before. I would never have done that.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So do you think is the biggest complaint or symptom that you see with people that want to come and work with you?
I see this over and over again. I know it in myself too, or would have known it more in myself, is that feeling of overwhelm, and being pulled in so many directions, because of that, um, conditioning to, the conditioning really to that we want to belong. We need to belong, so we need to align ourselves with values that are not necessarily our own, um, and to be really selfless. There's a lot, I see a lot of that with the people, with the women. You know, it's this in terms of polarity, it's like we're walking down the side of the street that's selfless, that there's no self. Carol Gilligan often talks about that. I love how she talks about it. She set up gender studies in Harvard in the 70s. And she talks about, like, there's no self. Well, if there's no self, then there's no relationship. But that's what I see. So it creates a lot of overwhelm. It was like who I was too. We're so caught up with all the things that have to be done and sorted out and fixed and managed, and then we're trying to be great mothers and great people in the workspace, you know, have that kind of perfect body, or a body that's really fit and, healthy, great partners. That's what I see most. And we find coping mechanisms to do it, but it's taken its toll massively at a point where we get overwhelmed. And at that place, it's the over woman. It's like we're over functioning, we're over scheduled, we're over leaning into everything and everyone. And we lose ourselves completely and lose our connection to our depths and our sovereign center. So we don't actually know who we are, and we're being spun. You know, we're spinning plates. I mean, I have to watch it in myself all the time. And it's at the cost of our sovereignty. You know, really living a life that's congruent with our depths. And so it starts to get really painful. That's what I see.
And do people come to you with physical ailments, or is it more emotional, mental?
Well, they're all connected because, you
Mm,
know, they can be one. When it turns up in the physical, it's a real call to
yeah.
action. You know, it's a real, like, okay. But I mean, yeah, so I get it across the spectrum,
Mm,
but it's usually that consistent, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed and I just don't feel like I'm living the life I'm here to live. There's something,
missing, something
yeah,
missing.
there's something missing. There's something missing and it's not making sense. So that's the talk in the
Mm,
head that they're keeping quite quiet because, you know, it would disrupt everyone around them. And then the ailments, yeah, I mean, in the body, it's huge anxiety and stress because it takes so much energy to keep that repressed.
mm-hmm.
So much
And we've
energy.
been repressing since we were born.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, so you mentioned sovereignty. That's certainly a word that I've come across a lot this last, 5 or 6 years, but I don't think it's something that nearly everyone understands.
Yeah, I think it's a charged word, and I use it very explicitly because I think it's an important word. I think
Mm,
it's a word we're evolving, and I think it's a word that's hard to understand because we're in that transition between what it used to be and what it is really becoming, and we're living into. Um, I suppose it's important. I've been really working with it since, I suppose, really for the last 5 or 7 years. And the way I work with something like that is I hold it like a koan, I hold it like a question. Like, what is it? Like, where is it in my body? What is, as I move in the world, can the world inform me and how, can I be informed uh, by what actually it means? Because it's a word that intrigued me
mm.
and particularly it's in mythology, in the Celtic mythology too. So, I mean, I could be here for half an hour talking about it, but it might be helpful. As I see it, is that you're the highest authority in your own life, and that authority comes from your depth. So, but it's not about a rigidity that this is my authority, I'm doing this, and affect the rest of you. So it is two aspects at least, which is I'm connected to my depths, to my rooted in that depth, and therefore I'm the highest authority. So I check everything as much as I can anyway in the body. Like, I will stop and I will see, does this, as you say, like, is this my truth?
Mm,
And again, to go back to Ken Wilber, like Ken would say, every truth is true and partial. My truth is not the absolute truth.
the whole
You,
truth.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we might have the same experience, but you might have a different truth. And so that's the second aspect. So even though I hold myself as the highest authority in my life, I also stay open to what is all the perspectives around me.
Mm,
And can I not get rigid in my own sense of truth, but actually know that as people show up in my life, that I can stay porous and open and maybe be even changed by what I hear. But so it's that real dance between, I know what I stand for right now in this moment. That might change though if I move
mm.
into a room and I encounter somebody who actually shows me a different perspective. So it's a kind of center and periphery. That's how I see it. I see things in kind of maps and images. So I see like the center whole and then the circle of the periphery. That as
Yeah,
I move in the world, I'm I know what I stand for. I keep checking in. I keep checking in. So it's a very dynamic state. It's not rigid.
mm.
you know, like I use that, like, do I wear a mask? Do I get a vaccine? That's what I used. Like, I kept coming back to my body. My body will tell me if I create that relationship with it over and over and over, I can trust my body. And then I'm not looking to other people or to, you know, what's the next, even in terms of like, you know, the style, the clothes we wear, the fashions, the whatever. I'm not going to be swayed by just what's out there. Like, what really feels like, oh, this is me. Yeah, this is, I feel comfortable in this, my body, you know, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, that's what I mean by sovereignty. And I'm an agent of change in the world. I take responsibility. Whatever happens to me in my life, I look as much to what's happening inward as to what's happening outside me. And I am always, it's always a dance between the inside, the interior, my depths, and my psyche, and what's happening on the outside.
I love that. I really, really love that. Like what you've described visually for me feels like a flow, kind of a co-creation between the core of you, the central pillar or soul's voice, soul power, and then the ether and the energy of the world around you, which is a multitude of truths from different perspectives. And then how you, yeah, you said there, dance, like that's all feminine, isn't it? The flow and co-creation, manifestation. It just feels so freeing.
Yeah, well, it's also masculine. It's a healthy masculine. I know what I stand for. I
Yes.
will hold
Okay.
my
Yeah.
ground while I stay open to you relationally as the feminine. So it's that beautiful dance of, you know,
The balance.
but yes, leading with the feminine, who's like, I want to be in relationship with myself and with everything around me and everyone, but I'll bring the masculine in service to that. I know what I stand for, and I'll take a stand. But I'll stay open. My belly will be open. My heart will be open. My pores will be open. I will be listening for the signals of truth that are
Yeah.
around me that maybe are uncomfortable for me, but I'll stay open. So I don't create an us and them. I don't create
Duality.
just that duality as much as I can.
Mm.
We're all these living, amazing, living creatures moving in this cosmic dance together, you know? And isn't that like, it's not, I mean, I don't remember this all the time, Jesus, like, you know, but it's like when I do, and it's hard to remember when you're in a conflict with someone in particular. It's like, I want to get rigid and take up position. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm feeling, you know, being right, it feels so good. But if I can just go, that's just my right. Maybe there's another truth here, you know. So all of that.
Yeah. And
Not,
the masculine piece reminded me of the word boundaries, you know, like that actually
yeah,
that some of our
totally.
boundaries are really, really, really important. And if we're almost too feminine, we are people pleasing and we're giving too much, and
Yeah.
there's no balance in the receive and give. And boundaries are really, really important as well.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I had to really learn was, you know, how to, yeah, take a stand, how to have myself, rather than, because I was in that more unhealthy feminine, as well as the unhealthy masculine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that was incredible. Last question. What would be your biggest piece of advice now for anyone who feels lost, who's really resonating with how you felt, you know, when you were at the peak crisis moments, or someone who sees the slippery slope to rock bottom is imminent? What do we do?
I would do what you do at Samhain at the beginning of winter. You just get slow and start to really trust that you're being called into an initiation, that you are being called to evolve, and evolution is messy and uncomfortable, but it's, you're being called into becoming more of yourself and recalling a lot of yourself that has gone underground, and to really know that this is your soul's call to uncover your genius, your soul's path in the world. We all, each of us, have a very individual, unique soul's path, and this is what happens when the soul calls you and says, it's time to live. It's time to live from your genius, from your dawn in the Celtic tradition, which means your poem or your gift, and to just go slowly and gently.
And dollops and dollops of compassion.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really reminds me of my journey, you know, and we lost our daughter Alice, it'd be nearly 9 years ago in November, and she was full term, and it was very unexpected, very traumatic, and that was exactly it for me. That was when I seized the opportunity to just reassess everything, because it was like, well, how do I go back? I can't go back to normal after this experience. It's like, that would be a waste of this grief, a waste of her life, a waste of the trauma. And yeah, for me, it was a very, very conscious decision to pick myself up and move forward, because I was young. I was 33. I needed, wanted to have a family, and yeah, I pulled myself out, and luckily found this tool, that EFT, that was going to guide me up there, and move forward into remembering all the things I connected with as a child, all the things we naturally know and forget with all the conditioning. So yeah, I mean, I've walked the path as well.
Amazing.
And I'm so grateful for it. The gratitude I have for that journey. So that's the message here. It's like, it can feel absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
But you will most likely be grateful for it.
Yeah. And you're in the womb. You're actually been brought back into the womb for a rebirthing.
Yes.
And your beautiful daughter gave you that gift.
I know.
But it doesn't feel like a gift at the time.
No.
Gift. Yeah.
But I quickly turned it into one, because
it sounds like,
yeah, because I was like, I could let this consume me, or I can shift my perspective of it. And I decided early on to turn it into a gift. And I was lucky I had that perspective. You know, obviously it was all felt meant to be. And I know that Alice is my guide. Like, she's literally with me all the time, like a twin, you know, that kind of energy. Yeah.
This wasn't that an amazing gift though. And I think, you know, I think if people are in that place, it is to just turn things and pivot and say, turn your perspective, go, what could be amazing of this? Like you said, you seize that moment, like what new gift is here for me in this? What learning, what gift? And then immediately you're open to life rather than sounds amazing. And
well, I am very grateful for it, and I'm sure you have gratitude for your experience as well.
Completely. Not always. Okay, not this again. But then that's the resistance. So it's okay to resist.
Yes.
The other thing is really important. Just like we try to pivot, and then the old self wants to resist, and that's part of the whole process. So don't make it I have to be perfect.
Yes.
Surrendering or letting go or turning or pivoting. It's like, I'll pivot, and then the old self will rear its head and go, what are we doing? No way.
And we do it in our own way. Like, and yeah, you're right. It doesn't all look perfect, and it is messy, and snotty and grovelly and painful in so many ways, but it's worth it when you and keep doing it. Like, I say jokingly to a lot of people, like, I will be tapping on my deathbed. I will be trying to let go as much as I can every moment of my life. This is an ongoing lesson. This is not something that you do once and then go, oh great, I'm free. I don't need to do anything else anymore.
Yeah, and that's where the wheel shows us. It's this constant, it's spiral. We keep spiraling. We spiral all the time, and then we just keep deepening and deepening. But it sounds, Sarah, like, yeah, you're really so I love that. Like, I'll be tapping on my deathbed, like, you're so committed. Amazing.
Committed, yeah, that's the word for it. Well, thank you. That was incredible. God, we've gone on a journey there. I feel like a real spiral indeed as well. And touched on loads of different amazing topics. Each in their own right could probably, have their own podcast in a way. So thank you so much. That was just beautiful. And there was many moments there where my body was tingling and my heart was bursting open and my eyes were closing, and I was just really trying to like take in what you were sharing with me, and I just felt that was so beautiful. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. That means the world, and that's what this is all about, isn't it? About tingling and opening our hearts, and that's the world.
Sharing.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Thank you for the work you do.
Oh, thank you. Little love in, I like it.
Yeah.